that really walks you through what it is that you're doing. Essentially, we're going to start in draft. We're going to open it up to be signed. After that deadline, it'll be closed. And then after it's closed and we're delivering it, we're going to finalize that letter. That's included here in this little status toolbar across the top. But every letter has a name. I am not going to do that right. Internapalooza, maybe. But obviously, the letter name is going to be a little more topical, a little more of a friendly name. By default, we're in the congressional session. That's all kind of part of our archival purposes. Here's where you can choose when you want to have a deadline. There's this new feature, you can say TBD, you can say, hey, I'm kind of floating this out. I don't know. I don't have a hard deadline. I'm kind of taking the pulse to see if people are interested in this topic. But generally speaking, people use a deadline to focus attention on their letter. If you say, hey, I don't have a deadline for this, it very well may get lost in the clutter because there's, hundreds of these things that go around every week. So you say, hey, I've got a hard deadline this week or next week or whatever it might be. That focuses people's attention on your particular letter. Deadlines are a date and a timestamp. Auto close. So here's a little setting. I won't worry about it too much. Usually we skip that, but if for whatever reason you wanted your letter to hard close when everybody signed it, you can do that. If you have a delegation letter, for example, and that once everybody signs the delegation letter, it closes and it notifies you. So like, for instance, hey, I don't have a deadline, but I want it to close when everybody signed it. That might be a way to do a delegation letter. You're going to tag this letter with a legislative topic. And these legislative issue areas come from the Library of Congress. It follows their taxonomy, which is in some instances different than some offices do it exactly. But this is a static list, A to Z. It's standardized. It's shared all throughout Quill, and it's what facilitates notifications in Quill. So you're going to want to find the topic that most closely applies, topic or topics that most closely apply to your letter. Maybe we're doing something with funding sports programs in schools or something like that. Here's where you can have your office's keywords, which are unique from the issue area tags. These are things that are just private to your office. Some offices use these. Actually, appropriations is a really good example. Many offices use an appropriations tag, to keep everything together from each appropriation cycle, or they might have a keyword tag for a special project or geographic regions in their district. It's really up to an office how they use these keywords. And again, it's just really for organizing of the archive. This point of contact is really typically the author, but sometimes offices restrict authorship. They say, no, only this one person or these two people can author letters, so they'll author them on behalf of other LAs. I haven't seen that too much, but the intention here is put the point of contact in your office. So, if you're doing this as an intern, you might tag, one of your colleagues as the point of contact. Here's the letter summary. This is just a short intro. This is going to be part of the emails that go around, the notifications. So when you invite offices, they're going to see this short intro. That's going to be their first introduction. So it's worth thinking about that and having kind of a good hook here in the letter summary. Also in this top box of details on the right side, now we're actually getting in where, on the left side, you kind of have metadata. On the right side, this is the real stuff. Here's where we're going to upload this letter. And I'm just going to grab that letter that I downloaded a moment ago. It doesn't have any real content in it, but you'll want to, draft and finalize your letter as close to final draft as you can get it. Again, you can change it in Quill here. I'll show you. But you don't want to have a blank letter. You want it to have the meat of what you're intending people to sign. If it's some placeholder content, people are going to kind of look at that funny. So you're going to want to have the real letter content there. Here are the merge fields that Quill is going to put in for your date and your closing in the signature format. You can always change this later, but you're going to set a placeholder. So, this letter, I've got a deadline next Friday. Maybe that means I'll send it out the following Monday. Again, I can change that date on the letter later. Almost everybody signs these sincerely. I'm not quite sure why that's a merge field, but it's there. And then signature formatting. So you have a way to lay out the signatures on the page. You can do the top row and then the remaining rows. So on the top row, you can have one or two or three signatures. And that's really, that decision is going to, how do I make that decision? Well, is this a letter that your boss is leading, like by him or herself? Then you would just do the one signature on the top. Typically, these letters have kind of multiple co-leads. So maybe there's two, like chair and ranking member of a committee side by side and a bipartisan letter. You'd have two signatures on that top row. And then, of course, if you just had like a whole bunch of people, three or more, you could do three. And then for the remaining rows, this is, I think, more of a byproduct of how many folks you get on a letter. So if you have a letter with like 5 signers, and you maybe do one on the top, and then you do 2 signatures in the remaining rows. So you'd have 1 and then 2 and then 2, that's 5. But as I mentioned, we're seeing letters with hundreds of signatures, and that's a lot of pages. And so if you got a ton of signatures, you're probably going to do 3 signatures on the remaining rows. Again, you can change these settings later, depending on, what you get for takers on your letter. Display signature lines. Here's another inline help. It's literally the line between like the John Hancock and the name and title of the member. I think everybody leaves that on. Quill takes over your letter layout. So you kind of pick the layout there. So that's that first box. That's all kind of the information about the letter itself and getting it uploaded.